Buying stock in Dameon Pierce, improved pass protection. How much more valuable will he be for this offense? And a little tight end talk. Will Brevin Jordan make the roster? And if so, what are his expectations?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every other day?
Every day. No, your team except for Mondays, since we're in the off season now.
Since we are in the off season. But if you are one of our everydayers, shout out to you guys. Sorry that we did not post on Monday, but we are back. And if you are new to the Locked On Texans podcast, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also follow on Twitter at Locked On Texans. I am John, some sports guy Hickman, joined by none other than Cody Davis, Sports Illustrated's own and Houston Texan Credential Media. Later today, he'll be out there on the field at the final OTAs for the Houston Texans. As you guys can see on the right side of the screen, today's episode, we're talking about Bobby Slowick's offense and relating to Gary Kubiak's offense. You guys remember the good old days with Gary Kubiak as the head coach. How does Brevin Jordan fit in the tight end group? And then we're going to kick it off with Dameon Pierce improving as a pass blocker. Coming out of Florida, pass blocking was something that I checked off my pros and cons list as a pro for Dameon Pierce. I did not think that he was going to be that great of a pass catcher coming into the NFL. But when I had an opportunity to go back and watch film, and then I had an opportunity when we had a chance last year at the Senior Bowl to watch him take on some of these blocks coming off the edge, coming back from the safety, his tenacity, his willingness to create that contact as a running back, to give your quarterback an extra second or two to make a play downfield. I was thoroughly impressed. I remember actually we had Big Sarge on last year. This was during the preseason, I think. And I remember saying something along the lines of, that's what I like about Dameon Pierce the most. However, last season during his rookie year, he struggled adjusting to the speed of the NFL, just like every other rookie coming into the league. Gave up 2 sacks, 5 pressures, and the numbers doesn't necessarily tell the story of the tape. Like the 2 sacks, okay, that's not that bad. But he just really struggled with picking up blocks early on in the season. Later in the season, in the year, he got a little bit better, especially with the consistency of making contact. But hearing from his running back coach, Danny Barrett, which we're about to hear from, he is thoroughly impressed of the improvements from Dameon Pierce as a running back.
And it's not just running back coach Danny Barrett. It's also rookie quarterback CJ Stroud. The first week of OTAs, when we had an opportunity to speak to CJ as part of his media availability, he talked about how excited he was to get an opportunity to play alongside Dameon Pierce. And, forget the running, forget the fact that he is joining a team that has one of the most exciting young running backs in the league. He was thoroughly impressed on how great Dameon Pierce has been in pass blocking. And last week, the second week of OTAs, I had an opportunity to speak to running back coach Danny Barrett about his improvements. And Danny Barrett also said the same thing, that Dameon Pierce has shown a lot of improvements with his pass blocking. And just take a listen to what he had to say. Coach, can you just start by talking about, what it means just to have Dameon Pierce just for the second season?
Well, it's actually good, the fact that, he's healthy, he's looking good, he's in good shape, and just the experience that he gained from last year has really came back and is carried over. It's like night and day. He's in shape, mentally he's in a good space, and it's just his work ethic is off the chain right now, and he's leading by example.
You talked about his work ethic. What have you seen from his growth? I know it's still early, OTAs. I know you guys haven't even put pads on yet, but what have you seen from his growth so far?
Well, just an overall understanding of what we're trying to get done. Last year everything was new, He was like, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, just so much going on. So I think he's been able to come back and really process things better. The game is slowed down for him now, and you can see just his patience and just overall ability now to adjust to the speed of the game has been tremendous. The fact that we brought in some experienced guys, Singletary, track record speaks for itself, has success up with the Bills, familiarity with the league, American Conference, all of that stuff, and then his experience and just the ability to relate, to a guy like Pierce has been great. Dare, again, another veteran guy in the room still, but also having Mike Boone come over from Denver, another experienced guy that's been to a few different places as well. So when you talk about just those guys alone, the combination of experience and skill set, it lends for a great year, for ourselves in the RB room. Competition is stiff, which means every day guys got to come ready to compete, and that's what I love about it. And they're helping each other. We talk a lot about iron sharpening iron, and these guys are really helping each other out in that capacity.
You mentioned, let me just ask you to follow up with you. And I've heard last year with Dameon, a rookie coming in, protecting the quarterback. Now you got basically a veteran group in there. Now the protection scheme said now with these backs in there, is it easier for you, or does it make it easier for them to understand, what you got to pick up on the blitz and so forth?
Yes, well, especially for a guy like Dameon, first year coming in, that's usually the toughest thing for your first year backs, is understanding the overall details of pass protection. And so he was able to get the experience last year, and he's night and day from where he was last year, this time around. Just understanding, seeing the big picture, before things happen. He's able to identify, things quicker now, get to his pickups and everything. So that's going to help us out tremendously, when he's in the football game. Teams don't think we're just going to pass the football. Just run the football. Because his ability now to pass protect and understanding, what's needed in our passing game from him.
A couple quick things that I do want to point out with my conversation with Danny Berry, and later on in that interview, you guys had an opportunity to hear A.D. Moore, one of Houston's local reporters here for Houston Roundball Review. But a couple quick things I do want to point out. I love the fact how Coach Danny Berry pointed out how Dameon Pierce is now processing stuff better and the game is slowing down for him. And that is something that's definitely going to help him with his pass protection, because if you go back to last season, John, as you just alluded to, that was something that former head coach Lovie Smith was always harping on. And when you go back to that very first game against the Indianapolis Colts, remember, everybody, including us, was wondering, why didn't Dameon Pierce play that much in his NFL debut? And that was part of the reason. It was the fact that his pass blocking wasn't up to par, and the Texans, Lovie Smith and his staff at the time, did not feel comfortable in having Dameon Pierce out there. And two, and most importantly, I do believe better pass protection is definitely going to improve and make Dameon Pierce a little bit more valuable, because as Coach Danny Berry said, when he's out there on the field, it's kind of going to keep the opposing team on their heels, because if you can put him in as a pass blocker, that's going to give the offense an opportunity to attack a little bit more, because now when he's back there in the backfield, you really don't know if Dameon Pierce is in the game to protect CJ Stroud or Davis Mills or whoever else is taking snaps under center, or if they're going to utilize him with his best on-field attribute, which is as a rusher. So, I think it's going to be very beneficial when you take a look at the second-year improvements of Dameon Pierce, knowing that he has put in the work, put in the time to improve his pass protection, John. I think year 2 is going to be stellar for Pierce.
Absolutely. So a couple of things. Hearing that he's just getting better and getting more comfortable, that screams he knows his assignments. That's confusing for a rookie back, understanding that where am I picking up this blitz right now? It's coming from this way, that way, and I have an assignment. I got to make a play. And so that was some of the things that I think early on Dameon Pierce really struggled with. But also, if we go back to last season, Devin Singletary, this is according to PFF rankings, Devin Singletary ranked 6 out of the top 10 top pass blocking running backs in the NFL. The list goes Saquon Barkley, New York, Tony Pollard, 2 NFC East guys right there. James Conner, Samaje Piran, Jamal Williams, Detroit Lions, Devin Singletary at 6, Devin Singletary at 6, Derrick Henry at 7, Ramondre Stevenson, shout out to my boy, at 8, Najee Harris at 9, Patrick Ricard for the Baltimore Ravens at 10. So, for Pierce, adding Devin Singletary, who is a guy that I think will eventually at some point, maybe in certain games, maybe take a snap or two away or a few away from Dameon Pierce. But it's still a competition at their running back position. Not to say that Dameon Pierce isn't the starter, but just to say you have another good runner in that running back room. This isn't Rex Burkhead. This isn't, Dare Ogunbowale. No disrespect to those guys. But this is a very efficient, good runner who is very good at pass blocking. So I think for Dameon Pierce, getting better, learning his assignments, understanding where he's supposed to be at on the field in certain situations helps keep him on the field, like you said, Cody. And then it does add a different element, I think, to the offense. Are we running the ball? Are we doing a 5-step drop? Are we doing a quick 3-step drop? And he's taking on the blitz. Whatever we're doing, being better at your job does allow the offense to open up another page book or so. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA Finals because right now, new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Great promotions every day. Safe and secure app. Get paid instantly. These are all of the pros of betting with FanDuel. There's no better place to bet on all of the playoff NBA Finals action right now than America's #1 sports book. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA and NFL. Welcome back, Locked On listeners and viewers. Before we get started, I wanted to do something. I want everybody to gather together, right? And pray. Put your lighters up. We're going to pray that the Houston Texans sign J.J. Watt to a one-day contract this offseason and retire number 99 this offseason and induct J.J. Watt into the Ring of Fire this offseason so he can retire as a Houston Texan, the greatest in franchise history, this offseason. Brevin Jordan, Cody.
First off, look, I know he retired, but I would much rather if he signed, let's say, a 2-week contract, suit up one game, take one more snap. I only say that because I personally do not like the I'ma sign a one-day contract and retire. And I don't like it because it doesn't hold the same value. Suit up week 1.
JJ has done enough
on the field, wave or whatever,
franchise.
and then come off. That's all I'm saying. Then we could do all that. But look, shout out to JJ Watt, man. If the New England Patriots are honoring Tom Brady, the very first game this season, I think the Houston Texans should do the same, man. J.J. Watt, of course, a GOAT, not only for the Houston Texans, but in the city of Houston as well. But speaking of J.J. Watt and the GOAT, man, when the Houston Texans first drafted Brevin Jordan, I thought Brevin Jordan was going to be at least the GOAT of tight ends for this organization. But as we enter year 3 of Brevin Jordan, man, things starting to look a little scary for my guy. As everyone knows, Brevin Jordan is going into his 3rd season, and just like Nico Collins, this is his 3rd season with his 3rd offense, with his 3rd offensive coordinator, with his 3rd head coach, and he is on the trajectory as a Nico Collins, as Davis Mills. Is
this also his 3rd tight end coach?
Is this? You know what? It might be 2nd if I'm not mistaken.
I'm going to let you finish. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, look it up. Now, when you take a look at a lot of the Houston Texans younger guys, especially the ones that was drafted in 2020, in 2021, a lot of them had to deal with a lot of the inconsistencies that the Houston Texans provided. And I am a firm believer that the inconsistencies that's been going on with the coaching staff, with their coordinators and everything else in between is part of the reason why we have yet to see a lot of those guys take that jump that we want them to take. And Brevin Jordan is right along those same lines. John, I think this is going to be an extremely important OTA period, mandatory workout program, training camp, preseason for Brevin Jordan, because when you take a look at those guys who are going into their third season and going to their fourth season, I think Brevin Jordan might be the one that's on the bubble of just making this 53-man roster. And I know some of you guys might hear that and think to yourselves, that might not be the case. You go back and you take a look at last season, there were several times where Brevin Jordan was just a healthy scratch. Now, before moving on, had an opportunity last week to catch up with tight end coach Jake Moreland, and this is what he had to say.
I know it's still early, but what have you seen so far from Brevin Jordan? This is going to be his third season. It's been kind of shaky up to this point.
Yeah, I think everybody in the group is just willing to learn. You know what I mean? And that's the big thing, is just trying to get these guys up to speed with knowing what to do and then letting their body take over for not having to think and just playing fast.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about the addition of Dalton Schultz? That is basically going to be the veteran of that position group as well.
Yeah, right. Anytime that you can add a veteran, a guy that's played as much as he's played in the offenses that he's played in, been able to have the success that he's had, he's going to be able to really provide some stability in the group, and provide a lot of leadership for the young guys.
When you look at the addition of Dalton, a lot of people, see him as a pass catcher, and rightfully so, but, the one thing that goes kind of like to the side to his ability to be a run blocker as well. What do you think his attributes on the field as a run blocker is going to be able to help improve his run game?
Yeah, I think he's an athletic guy who's really smart. You know what I mean? And so in order to be successful in this offense, you have to be a smart guy. And so he's going to be able to help the young guys, from being in all the places that he's been in, but also for him to have a lot of confidence in his ability to be able to get to the targets that we need to and be able to sustain the blocks will be great.
And he has had 3 tight end coaches in 3 years. I don't think it's no around. I think we're going to be fair about it. He is on the bubble, right? I really think so. Simply because when you look at Brevin Jordan's skill set, your question now would be, do you fit in the tight end group, or can you be utilized in this offense as an H-back, right? They signed Andrew Beck in the offseason. Troy Harrison, the fullback, is still on this roster. And I wonder how much will he be able to beat out those guys, along with I'm not worried about beating out Dalton Schultz. He is here. But when you look at second-year tight end Tegan Quatoriano, Jake said something last week, you're going to have to be able to catch, block, run. There is no we have a guy for this and we have a guy for that. It's kind of something Houston has been implementing in their offense the past few seasons, where you have a quote-unquote pass catcher tight end and then you have a pass blocking tight end. They want their guys to be versatile. And in the first 2 seasons of Brevin Jordan's rocky career, rocky from a field standpoint, from a front office standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, he hasn't shown any consistencies to be able to do both on the field at one time. And so looking at Brevin Jordan, man, I am worried about whether or not he makes this roster. Because what is his competition right now? There is no competition to Dalton Schultz, right? Like, he is the Texans' number 1, tight end on the roster. Tegan Quatoriano right now is now listed as the second tight end on the roster. Brevin Jordan is listed at third. Mason Schreck. And then again, we look at Andrew Beck and Troy Hester. So I think his competition is Mason Schreck. And I would also throw in second-year man Tegan Quatoriano. That's his competition. He has to be much better than Schreck. That shouldn't even be a competition. But the competition between him and TQ is one of those keep your eye out during camp battles, because TQ is already number 2 on his roster for the depth chart for the tight ends. And I think if we're looking at what this offense will be predicated around, he's a better fit. And if he's a better fit, you are a guy that, he was drafted during the color years, had an opportunity to do something during the Lovie Smith era. So funny. But you haven't shown consistency, and it could be time to move on from him.
I hear you on that, John. I do want to say, we opened up the show talking about the improvements Dameon Pierce made in his pass protection. I think Brevin Jordan is going to have to showcase that same thing. We remember coming out of Miami, he was rated the second, if not the second and third best tight end, and the biggest knock against him was his blocking. And here we are entering year 3. It's still a big concern. So, hopefully Brevin Jordan could be a part of this roster. I still believe in him, hopefully with better quarterback play, better coaching. Like you looked at me like that, better coaching. We could finally see some of the promise that was showcased to us when he started playing as a rookie, especially coming out of Miami once again as a second, third rated tight end in the 2020 draft. But Brevin Jordan, man, it's gonna be scary, man.
Yeah. First 2 seasons combined for 306 yards, 3 touchdowns. All of his touchdowns came during his rookie year. As Cody already mentioned, there were several games last year where he was healthy scratches, was not on the field. So he has to work against the stigma from last year, drop passes and opportunities that he failed to reel in last year. And he's working up got an uphill climb right now to stay on this roster, no doubt about it. Welcome back in, Locked On Texan listeners and viewers. Thank you for checking us out today and sticking around to discuss Bobby Slowick's offense and how it can relate to Gary Kubiak's offense. That zone scheme that Arian Foster feasted in, Ben Tate feasted in, Vontae Leach was a All-Pro or a Pro Bowler during that time. Dwayne Brown was a monster in. Brandon Brooks. That offensive line was crazy back then. And then they had the running backs to go with it, which is what Houston has right now. Bobby Slowick talked about how this offense relates to the Gary Kubiak scheme of the good days for the Houston Texans. Bobby Slowick was coached under Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan comes from the Gary Kubiak coaching tree from 2006 to 2009. Shanahan was an assistant under Gary Kubiak with the Houston Texans, working as an offensive coordinator in his final 2 years. How Houston didn't go from Gary Kubiak to Kyle Shanahan instead of Gary Kubiak to Bill O'Brien, I don't know. But obviously there is a lot of relations from his teacher from the time that he spent under Gary Kubiak, and he's going to try to replicate some of that same thing that brought success from the Houston Texans to the 49ers. And one of his quotes was, I still remember watching when I first got the offense in San Francisco, all of these Houston Texans cut-ups and Andre Johnson, Matt Schaub, David Anderson. David Anderson had a couple of good years for the Houston Texans. But all of these guys running the same stuff we are running right now, and the principles and the foundations of what they did is all there. But like everything, it kind of evolves as it goes. Gary Kubiak coached the Houston Texans from 2006 to 2013. Listen, I think one of the biggest takeaways, my biggest takeaway from Bobby Slowick looking to have some type of, some of the same DNA from their fabric of the Gary Kubiak years to this one. We talked about Dameon Pierce. Listen, Dameon Pierce, Devin Singletary, those two guys are going to eat. And I also look at, was it Nico Collins? We'll be talking later for OTAs.
Mm-hmm.
Nico Collins, specifically Nico Collins, how they will utilize him down the field whenever the run game is so good, they're able to stretch out the field with play actions. Maybe look at doing some of these zone stretch, these zone stretch run play action plays, where they may have Nico who could just cross over the field because the safety may be committing and he's beating this guy one-on-one. And so those are the two biggest things I'm looking at, guys. How the running backs should be able to feast in their style of offense, and the big plays that I can't wait to talk about a little bit more, but the big plays that will be made down the field by the outside receiver. They're looking at, if it's not the outside receiver, just a receiver in general stretching the field out for this team. And that's been an issue for Houston, at least going back to last year for sure. Brandon Cooks the year before did a very good job on his behalf, playing in that first year with Davis Mills, but they haven't been consistently getting those explosive 10 to 20-yard plays down the field with this offense. I think Houston ranks top at the bottom of the league in explosive plays. So, yeah, go ahead and bring in some of those good old days, and hopefully those good old days, as he says, evolves to current good days, but the offense will replicate a little bit of it, but they'll be successful being able to put points on the board and move the ball consistently.
It just crossed my mind while you was breaking down Bobby Slowick and Gary Kubiak. This might be the first time the Houston Texans actually have the perfect combination across the board. Because when you brought up the Gary Kubiak offense, as great as that offense was, what was the one thing they was missing? A quarterback. A franchise quarterback. Then when they finally got the franchise quarterback, what was they missing? A reliable run game at a certain point, an offensive line, and by the time they got the offensive line and reliable run game, we wanted to see better coaching. Like, I think for the very first time, and by the way, the defense was always good during the Gary Kubiak in the beginning of Bill O'Brien. Then by the time the offense was the best part of your team, the defense started to slow down because everybody was getting old. Hint, hint. I hate to say it. Jonathan Joseph, one of my all-time favorite players. John, you remember, I think it was our first season. I can't remember what game it was, but Jonathan Joseph on several occasions looked like he was out of breath. And at the end of that season, which was in 2019, he called it a career. But that's what makes me most excited about the Houston Texans, not just in 2023, but over the next few years. It seemed like that they finally have the perfect combination. Quarterback, run game, offensive line, coaching, defense. It's exciting, man. I don't know how you look at the Houston Texans and don't think that they're not going to be better than what they have been over the last, let's say, throughout the 2010s, because the start of the 2020s, it's been rough.
Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Texan podcast on YouTube. Let's give you guys a quick update on our journey to 4K. As of right now, we sit at 3,895. So we're 5 subscribers away from 3,900. We'll be 100 subs away from 4K. I thought we get to 4K by the end of June.
Oh, let's say this week. This week. Let's push it and say this week. Come on, man. Let's go ahead and get it. Our goal.
We get caught in 4K by the week. I may buy somebody lunch. I don't know. Whoever's a 4,000 person, well, y'all got to check, but y'all come, y'all going to get some lunch. Or I may do the whole show shirtless. I'm not doing that. I'm Johnson Sports Guy Hickman. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12.
And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, it's Cody, COTYDAVIS_24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.